All right, we're going to talk about how to organize and prepare for our histogram, boxplot, and data activity. It's really important that we can connect all of these three items together. We want to be able to go between different kinds of graphical displays and then understand how those relate to the data. I mean, surely you can imagine in real life that this matters, that you can look at data graphically and you can see it in a couple different formats and then understand what that means about the data. Okay? All right. So, the very first thing that you need to do is put your initials on the back of every card because if you're sitting there right next to somebody, then and they drop a card and then you drop a card, it will be a nightmare to figure out which card whose is whose. So put your initials or your name on every card, front and back, whichever. And then of course you're going to cut them all out and put them in the baggie that we provide for you. Okay. Once you have done that, then first, let's go ahead and take a look at what we have. We obviously have three kinds of cards, ones that have the data, ones that are histograms, and ones that are box plots. So that looks like this. Okay, so we've got ourselves the data pieces, the data cards, the histogram cards, and then the box plots. All right, now, after we do that, then the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to separate them and try to avoid writing on the cards, okay? You want to be able to do this activity multiple times, and if you write the answers on the cards, then that's not going to help you in the future whenever you need to practice it again, okay? So separate your cards by the skew. So within all the data cards, we want to see which ones are skewed left or skewed right or symmetric. Okay, so within the data, how do you do that? Well, let's take a look at it. So here I have this laid out here. So take a look at this piece of data, this set of data. So these two numbers, the mean is fairly close to the median. So I think that's somewhat symmetric. So I'm going to put that in my symmetric pile. This one, 50.08, that's about the same as 50, so that one's a symmetric one, okay? So I'm just going to kind of stack these actually so I can bring them all up here. Now looky here. Here's one. 68. The mean is less than the median. Okay, so do you remember if the mean is, and don't write on your card, okay, remember to not do that. So if the mean is less than the median, then which direction is this shape skewed? It is skewed to the left. So then you're going to go and put that in the skewed left pile. All right, so after you have put all your data in skewed left, symmetric, or skewed right, which, by the way, you want to look at a skewed right one? Well, here we go. Here's one right here. Look, the mean is greater than the median. So if the mean is greater than the median, then there you have that. Now, maybe you wanted to make yourself a note, not on the cards, but you know, skewed left, the mean is less than the median. Symmetric, they're about the same. Skewed right, the mean is greater than the median. Okay. All right. Now let's do the histograms and the box plots. So now let's sort those as skewed left, symmetric, and skewed right. If we take a look at the histograms, now this is data that is not going to be perfectly symmetric, but it still could be considered, you know, a more symmetric item. So take a look here. For example, here is some data. Look at this card here and this card here, 4 and Roman numeral 8. Those are not perfectly symmetric, but they're somewhat symmetric. So those are going to be in the symmetric pile. Take a look at this one here. This one you can tell is skewed left. Here is one that is skewed right. This one also is skewed right. So you need to then take these cards and place the histograms in the correct pile. And finally, take your box plots. Let's take a look at those real quick because sometimes people wonder how to classify these. Let's take a look at 2 of those. So let's see here. So you can see here that with this box plot A, it's stretched out here to the right. Now, is it the whisker that I'm looking at, or is it the median to the end that I'm looking at? And that answer is yes. I'm kind of looking at them both, looking at it all. So this one, also looks skewed to the right. It looks more stretched out to the right. So I'm going to classify that as skewed to the right. So that is your very first step. And we should go ahead then and pause and let you do that. Separate all your data, histogram, and box plots into these three categories: skewed left, symmetric, and skewed right. So pause, and then we will come back together after you have done that to talk about the next strategy in grouping your cards. All right, so after you have grouped all your materials skewed left, skewed right, and symmetric, so then it looks something like this, okay? So you've got, in fact, there's 6 cards that are skewed left, 6 cards that are skewed right, and then there's twice as many, so 12 that are somewhat symmetric. Okay, after you do that, then the next step is you want to take a set of cards. So then just put, say, like the symmetric and the skewed right ones to the side. Okay, keep them clustered, but put them to the side. And so we're going to look at just, say, the skewed left section. Okay, we'll look at those skewed left ones. And then we will be able to relate them together based on their variability. So we'll take a look at that standard deviation because that's going to tell us how varied the data is. That smaller standard deviation will be more closely clustered around the center. And that larger standard deviation will be more varied and more spread out. So that's going to look like this. Say that this is our data set of all the skewed left items. Okay, so let's move those around. I like to start with the data. So, and I put them, see, look here. Here's a skewed left, standard deviation 17. This one has a standard deviation of 30. So I have my less varied on the left, my more varied on the right. So now I'm just going to take my 2 histograms. I'm going to look at those 2 guys. So let's look at these 2 histograms. Just by looking at these 2 histograms, can you decide which one is more varied and which one is less varied? Well, I can just tell from their range that this one, histogram Roman numeral 3, is definitely much more closely clustered together, so it is less varied. And this one is much more spread out, so it's more varied. And then we're going to do that same technique with our box plots. Let's look at our 2 box plots and see which one looks less varied and which one looks more varied. So compare box plot C and D. So here we go. Oh, definitely, I can see that box plot D is much more compact, much more closely clustered together. So that's going to go over here on the left with the smaller variability on the right. So there now I have my ordered triples with the data, histogram, and box plot, and that's how they match up. Okay, and so then you're going to continue that process with your symmetric and your skewed right. Now, this symmetric one is a little bit more challenging, so just a little hint on that. Again, I like to go with my variability from least to greatest, and then I like to do the very smallest. I can look at these box plots and I can see the one that looks the very least varied, and then the most varied. So I like to do the extremes, and then after I've done the extremes, then I do those ones in the middle. All right, so there's a couple of techniques of how to match up your information. And once you do that, then we will check all of those together and see how you did on matching up your data with your histogram and with your box plot. Okay, good luck to you on that.